Vande Rupa Sanatana Raghuyuga Shri Jiva Gopalako. And the translation, I offer my respectful obeisances unto the six Goswamis, namely Shri Rupa Goswami, Shri Sanatan Goswami, Shri Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Shri Raghunath Das Goswami, Shri Jiva Goswami, and Shri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, who are very expert in scrutinizingly studying all the revealed scriptures with the aim of establishing eternal religious principles for the benefit of all human beings. Thus they are honored all over the three worlds, and they are worth taking shelter of because they are absorbed in the mood of the gopis and are engaged in the transcendental loving service of Radha and Krishna. So now we recite together Srila Rupa Goswami pranams. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam. When will Srila Rupa Goswami, who has established within this material world the mission to fulfill the desire of Lord Chaitanya, give me shelter under his lotus feet? Okay, so now we can say the further invocation for the, you could say for the text itself. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we are continuing with text number 1, and I'll just read the text and you can read it together with me in your textbooks. Vacho vegam manasa krodha vegam jiva vegam udaropasta vegam etan vegan yo vishaheta dira sarvam apimam prithivim sasisyat. And the translation by Srila Prabhupada. A sober person who can tolerate the urge to speak, the mind's demands, the actions of anger, and the urges of the tongue, belly, and genitals is qualified to make disciples all over the world. So yesterday we discussed vacha, which means to speak or vibrate. The urge for that means vacha vegam. And today we're going to continue with the mind. Manasa vegam, which means the restlessness or fickleness of the mind. So I'm in paragraph number 5 in the purport. And I'm just going to read some sentences and then continue. The restlessness or fickleness of the mind, manovega, is controlled when one can fix his mind on the lotus feet of Krishna. The Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela, chapter 22, text 31 says, Krishna Surya Sama Mayahaya Andakara Yahan Krishna Tahan Nahi Mayara Adhikara. Krishna is like the sun, and Maya is like darkness. If the sun is present, there is no question of darkness. Similarly, if Krishna is present in the mind, there is no possibility of the mind's being agitated by Maya's influence. Om Jnana Atimirandasya Ajnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanabhyo Vaishnavabhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakti Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we are continuing with this text number 1, which means how to recognize a qualified spiritual master. And yesterday we covered Vachavegam, the urge to speak or to vibrate. So we can put slide 14 onto the screen, which is from paragraph 12, just to recap Vachavegam. Yes. Yes, Srila Prabhupada says that the conclusion is that only when we talk about devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead can we refrain from useless, nonsensical talk. We should always endeavor to use our speaking power solely for the purpose of realizing Krishna consciousness. So now we go to the next part, which is Manasavega. You can put me back onto the screen. Manasavegam, which means restlessness or fickleness, of the mind. Now in Bhagavad Gita, in chapter 2, Sri Krishna have us understand in text number 60 that in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says there that it is very difficult to control the mind and senses without being fully Krishna conscious. Yes, I'll repeat, it is very difficult to control the mind and senses without being fully Krishna conscious. And in Bhagavad Gita text 6, also in text, at least text 34 in chapter 6, Arjuna himself confirms this in relationship to speaking with Krishna. That chanchalam hi mana Krishna pramati balavad ridham tasyaham nigraham manye vayur eva suduskaram. So what does Arjuna say? Arjuna says that the mind is so restless and turbulent. It's very obstinate. It is very, very strong. O Krishna, Arjuna says, and to subdue it, I think, or Arjuna feels that it is more difficult than controlling the wind. Yes. So this is the mind. It is so strong and obstinate that it sometimes overcomes our common sense and our reasoning in terms of our intelligence. And although the mind is supposed to be following the consciousness of one's intelligence, still the mind can overpower one's common sense or reasoning or intelligence. So for a person in this practical world who has to fight with so many opposing, you could say, elements, it is most difficult. There's many opposing elements externally. friends and enemies and so forth. But it is very difficult to control the enemy of the mind, which is constantly accompanying us in this world. So artificially, sometimes one may have like a sort of equilibrium, in terms of being equal to friend and enemy. But ultimately, nobody, especially in the material world, um, can actually control the mind, which is even more difficult than controlling the raging wind. And Srila Prabhupada also says that the intelligence is meant to direct the mind. But the mind is so strong and it is so stubborn that it can overcome one's own intelligence. And Prabhupada gives a nice analogy. It's just like an acute infection may surpass the strength or potency of any medicine that one can take in that sense. So such a strong mind is actually supposed to be controlled, by the practice of yoga. But specifically, such practice of yoga is not possible in this age of Kali. So therefore, it is important that this simile that is used, that one cannot capture even the blowing wind. Nobody can capture that. And the mind is even stronger than the raging or blowing wind. So therefore, it is even more difficult to capture the turbulent mind, although there may be a turbulent wind. And then Srila Prabhupada says that the easiest way to control the mind, and he said, as suggested or given or instructed by Lord Chaitanya himself, is to chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. But that chanting has to be done in the consciousness of humility. And the consciousness of humility means that, I am not qualified to chant this Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. But despite my lack of qualification, I am still continuing to chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, irrespective of any provocation of the mind, or any difficulties, or any challenges, or any stress or depression that I may go through. Still, I will never give up chanting. So that is the humility, is to never give up the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Now, one new person named Gerald, he wrote to Srila Prabhupada, in February of 1971. He wrote a letter to Srila Prabhupada. And in that letter, Gerald expressed that, the mind gives so much of agitation. And he's trying to chant, but it's so difficult because of the agitation of the mind. Then Srila Prabhupada, he responded and he said that, as a matter of fact, it's like Srila Prabhupada naturally responds to it because he's free from the agitation of the mind and senses. Then Srila Prabhupada said, don't worry. You do not be disappointed because sometimes the mind may give it agitation. It's not all the time. Sometimes the mind may give agitation. And because the mind may give agitation sometimes, therefore you could say that the agitation is simply temporary. But as we chant more and more and more, then Srila Prabhupada said that the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra will drive away the agitation of the mind, not the mind itself. It will drive away the agitation of the mind. And then Srila Prabhupada recommended to this newly connected devotee named Bhakti Gerald. He said that in order to drive away the agitation and flickering nature of the mind, sometimes one has to chant loudly. Just like, if there's no danger and everything is nice, one can chant peacefully. But if some danger is approaching you, like some dog is attacking you or somebody is running towards you in a threatening way, you're going to scream. You're going to scream, go away, you know, go away. Why are you attacking me? Go. You're going to scream loudly in that way. So similarly, Srila Prabhupada says, when the mind is louder than you're hearing your chanting, you know, and simply chant loudly whenever there is disturbance from the mind. And when you chant loudly, then that loud chanting will be heard by you rather than bothering about the disturbance of the mind. So therefore, that means attentive chanting. And then when there's no, you could say, agitation of the mind, then one can chant peacefully. But that agitation, Srila Prabhupada emphasizes, it is not there all the time. So the more we chant, and the more loudly we chant when there's agitation of the mind, then the less and less the mind will be agitated towards oneself as the spirit soul. So it's a wonderful instruction from Srila Prabhupada. In other words, the chanting will lessen the agitation in the mind, and then the mind will simply follow the intelligence of Krishna. And that means we follow the intelligence of Krishna. Similarly, simply by hearing our chanting. So let's get to slide number 15. And it's a beautiful, you could say, one line of Srila Prabhupada. Manasa Vegam, the mind's demands. And Srila Prabhupada says, however, that means however indicates, somehow or the other, if one always thinks of Krishna and how to serve Krishna best, one's mind will be naturally controlled. So this nice sentence in this paragraph 5, which is the last sentence in the purport, it indicates that we don't have to worry about controlling the mind. It is not possible. We just try to be Krishna conscious, chant our rounds attentively, and try to serve Krishna the best, and also try to spread Krishna consciousness to others. Naturally, Krishna and Radharani will be controlling one's mind. Okay, you can put me back on the screen. Now, one disciple, he sort of was quite agitated by his mind especially, but he was not breaking the 4 regulative principles because the mind tells you all of these naughty things to do like that. But he was worried. He was really worried. So he said something to Srila Prabhupada about controlling the mind. Yeah. And Srila Prabhupada immediately sort of retorted to him. He said, you can't control your mind. You just remember or think of serving Lord Chaitanya, and he will control your mind. That is all we have to do. In other words, Srila Prabhupada is indicating here that, why should we take the trouble of controlling our mind? You just hand it over to Krishna and Srimati Radharani. And how you hand that over? You simply try to serve Lord Chaitanya. You simply try your best to chant attentively the holy names. And give the problem to them. Give the problem of the mind to Lord Chaitanya or to Radha and Krishna. And they will control it. They have no problem in doing that. But are we ready? Are we really, ready to actually hand over our mind, that is giving us so much trouble to control? So it's very, very, very important that this is actually the most positive or best approach. That if we always remember how to serve and think of how to spread Krishna consciousness, then the obstacles that are presented by this manasa vega, the urges of the mind. And they will be easily be overcome by the mercy of Radha and Krishna and Lord Chaitanya. Of course, by the mercy of the spiritual master also. So therefore, we should make a special effort to hear and chant and engage in practical devotional service as much as we can. And that will help us not to control our mind. That will help us to surrender our mind, which is so naughty and sometimes, mad or crazy in that sense. Help us to hand over that, mad or crazy mind to Lord Chaitanya and to Radha and Krishna. Okay. We can take questions about Manasa Vegam or questions in general, if one wants to take. Before I go to Krodha Vegam. Vacha Vegam, the urges of and to speak nonsense and so forth, and a vibrating mundane sound, and Manasa Vegam, which means the mind's demands. And then it leads us to Krodha Vegam, the actions of anger. So before I go to the actions of anger, if anybody has any questions on this basis, we could take it now. Hare Krishna. You can raise your hand. So if Krishna Prema Pradayaka Prabhu sees your hand raised, then he could unmute you, or you unmute yourself and come onto the screen.
Ramananda Gaura Prabhu has a question.
Okay, can you come onto the screen, Ramananda Gaura Prabhu? Unmute yourself and start speaking, and you'll come onto the screen.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Tell me.
Maharaj, just now Maharaj mentioned that without fully Krishna consciousness, so in devotion, it is very difficult whether fully or unfully, or I'm not clear on that. What is meant by fully Krishna consciousness?
Fully Krishna conscious. Yes. Yes. It's a nice practical question. Now, fully Krishna conscious can indicate different things. For a brahmachari and a sannyasi, it may be easier in that inverted commas, fully Krishna conscious. But you can also be fully Krishna conscious by being a good devotee father, a good devotee mother, and a good devotee son, a good devotee daughter, or a good devotee husband, or a good devotee wife. In other words, I use the words devotee first and then the word husband or wife, like devotee father, devotee mother. It's a prefix. See? So, in order to be fully Krishna conscious, one has to also be conscious. In other words, one cannot neglect one's duty as a father, mother, husband, wife, son, or daughter. One cannot be irresponsible in that. So one has to be conscious in order to be also fully Krishna conscious of one's responsibilities, especially in family life. See? So it's not that at the neglect or of not doing one's duty as a mother, father, husband, wife, son, or daughter, one can be fully Krishna conscious. No. One has taken that responsibility as a mother, father, husband, wife, son, or daughter. And one should be, performing those duties responsibly in relation to being a devotee father, not just a father, a devotee mother, a devotee husband, devotee wife, devotee son, and devotee daughter. So that indicates being fully Krishna conscious. Now, I have mentioned another example also in relation to being fully Krishna conscious. Means first one has to be conscious, then one can be fully Krishna conscious. See? Fully Krishna conscious doesn't mean that you are actually remembering Krishna all the time. fully Krishna conscious means you are actually engaged in some practical devotional service. Like, for example, if Ramananda Gaur Prabhu, is cooking, in the deity kitchen, cooking for the Raj Bhog offering. See? Now, if you are always remembering Krishna and never forgetting Krishna, which means being Krishna conscious, but instead of putting, salt in the sabji, you put sugar. You are so much remembering Krishna that you make a mistake by putting sugar instead of salt in the sabji. That's not being fully Krishna conscious. See, that's not being fully Krishna conscious. You have to be conscious of how you are cooking. And while you're conscious while cooking, you may not be remembering Krishna. You are remembering that you should put salt, in the sabji. That means you're fully Krishna conscious. You're conscious of your activity and not conscious of Krishna. It is for Krishna's pleasure. It is for Krishna's pleasure. So similarly, if a mother is taking care of a child, she was not there for me. Although she's sitting with me, but your mind is somewhere else. So therefore, we should be conscious of also Krishna's parts and parcels, and we should be conscious and dedicated of exactly, how we are doing particular services. Like there's an example, an actual example that was I witnessed myself personally. So when I was serving as the president in ISKCON Durban, as a Sri Sri Radharana temple, sometimes, if I have some spare time, I go to the temple room and I just chant Hare Krishna, japa. And at that time when I went, it was late morning. There was a number of Matajis, were stringing garlands, flowers and stringing garlands, for the next day's offering, for the deities in the morning. So I was sort of chanting, but then, and then suddenly I was distracted by my own Mataji, like, oh, and she ran, and she ran. And what happened was, while she was threading the garland with a big needle, she mistakenly punctured one of her fingers, and that garland cannot be used anymore because, it was touched by her and then some blood was coming. So she ran. So I immediately understood that she was not conscious of making the garland. She was conscious of something else, maybe, looking at the deities or something like that. But at the same time, she was not conscious of her service. So therefore, it is important to be conscious, which means that one is fully Krishna conscious. And to be conscious indicates that whatever particular service you're doing, you must do it with great care and attention. And even when you're chanting Hare Krishna, you should do it with great care and attention also. So that is how to be fully Krishna conscious. You're fully conscious of your service that you're doing to bring that service to some result of fruition, to actually be enjoyed by Radha and Krishna, like cooking a sabji or making a garland and so on. Ramananda Gaur Prabhu, is that all right? Or others want to ask some questions? It's a slight sort of, little another track we took in terms of, Manasa Vegam, the mind's demands. But still, it's nevertheless important. A very practical question. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. There's Akansha Mataji. She wanted me to read the question on her behalf. So she says,
Is she like on the screen or what?
she's here, but I think she don't want to come on the screen. So she just asked me to read on her behalf.
Okay, go ahead.
My question is that many times the office or work issues lead to lots of agitation which completely disturb the consciousness for that time. how one can deal with the situation or try to control mind agitation at that time.
Nice question. The important factor is to first surrender to Krishna and Srimati Radharani before we do anything else for the day, unless if there's an emergency or some early duties with the family, like making their lunch to go to work and attending to the children before they go to school. But before one goes to the office, ideally, I don't know how practical it may be for different people, for different devotees, but ideally, one should be absorbed by surrendering oneself at the lotus feet of Radha and Krishna. And the practical way to do that is to try to chant, if one can chant all one's japa of minimum 16 rounds in the morning and then go to work, or go to college or university, wherever you're going for during the day. So because we are honoring our consciousness and being placed at the lotus feet of Radha and Krishna by chanting our japa, that will carry us, throughout the day. It's like a transcendental vaccine that you immunize yourself in the morning, and that will carry you out for the rest of the day by chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, especially in japa. And when one does that, even when agitation comes, through the mind, especially the mind's demands, even during the day, and even agitation may be aggravated by association with one's colleagues at work or at the office, or even college or university. Radha and Krishna will see to that you are protected, because you have surrendered to them as best as you can by chanting your japa in the morning. Now, the next question may arise like this: but Maharaj, we cannot do all 16 rounds in the morning before we go out. But that's the minimum for the basic vaccine. That's the minimum, 16 rounds of japa. So then what to do? There's only one way to answer that question. Early to bed and early to rise. As it says, keeps a man or woman healthy, wealthy, and wise. So if we can rest early and rise earlier and try to chant our 16 rounds before we go out for the day, that transcendental vaccine of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra will protect us. Even if we are agitated by our own desires, and even if we are agitated by other persons, externally coming onto us, we will always be protected by Radha and Krishna. That is the only way. Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama eva kevala. Kalo nasteva, nasteva, nasteva gatira. Is to chant the holy name, chant the holy name, chant the holy name, especially in japa in the morning. Akanksha, is that all right? All right. Any other questions?
Thank you. Yes, Maharaj. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
So gradually try to take rest early in the evening and
Yes.
night, and gradually rise up early and then do that. There's no other way. There's no other.
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
So should I move along with Krodha Vegam?
Yes, Maharaj. There's no one asking questions so far.
So Krodha Vegam means the actions of anger. Vacho Vegam, Manasa Vegam, Krodha Vegam. See? The actions of anger. See? So when we can control our speech and vibrating the tongue, Vacho Vegam, then it's easier to control the mind. Not you can control, but through speaking and chanting, vibrating the holy name, Vacha Vegam, the tongue vibrating, and speaking Krishna Katha and hearing Krishna Katha. See? then it's easier to offer the mind's demands and agitations to Radha and Krishna. See? But if one does not do that, then it leads to Krodha Vega, the actions of anger, from Manasa Vega. See? So in the purport itself, it says that the frustration of one's material desires, because one is giving into the mind's demands to try to execute one's material desire. And that frustration of not fulfilling one's material desires leads to anger. And anger is technically, you could say, a symptom of lust. A symptom of lust. So therefore, lust is called kama, not karma, K-A-R-M-A, but kama, K-A-M-A. Kama esha, krodha esha, raja guna samudbhavaha. See? So kama means lust, which is actually the demands of the mind. The demands of the mind, technically speaking in one word, is it's a lusty mind. See? So the kama, leads, if you're frustrated in not fulfilling one's material desires, then one becomes angry. So therefore, anger is called kama nuja. This krodha or anger, krodha vegam, actions of anger, is called kama nuja. So kama nuja follows kama, lust. So therefore it's called kama nuja. It is like a younger brother of kama. It comes forth from lust, this anger. See? So in the purport, Prabhupada discusses this of how we cannot really get rid of this anger much, but we can dovetail the propensity to be angry in Krishna's service. So he gives wonderful examples in actually paragraph 6 in the purport of Lord Chaitanya, Hanuman, and Arjuna. He says that how Lord Chaitanya became angry at Jagai and Madai, and especially Madai, who attacked and injured Lord Nityananda. So that anger is dovetailed, in protecting devotees. See, as by Lord Chaitanya. And Hanuman, he became angry. A monkey is very attached to its tail, So when he went to Lanka, they put his tail on fire. And the tail is like the best thing that the monkey has. It's attached to it. So Hanuman said, "Oh, you have put my tail on fire? Okay." And he became angry and he burnt the whole of Lanka. By his anger. And then Srila Prabhupada indicates in the purport about Arjuna that, if you cannot fight if you're not angry. You'll only fight as a Kshatriya when you become angry. So Prabhupada indicates in the purport that Krishna spoke the entire Bhagavad Gita just to make Arjuna angry to fight. Just to make Arjuna angry to fight. So these are beautiful examples of anger, in devotional service, in relationship to pleasing Krishna. Another time, in our first Pandal program in 1970, in November 1970, and it's a famous place in Delhi called Connaught Place. In Delhi, there's a Pandal program. So one tourist foreigner, you could say in one sense, from the Western world, he was a young man and he came to see Srila Prabhupada because he came probably the previous night to the Pandal program and he was very inspired by Krishna consciousness and very inspired by Srila Prabhupada's words. See? So he said to Srila Prabhupada, and he meant well. Actually, he was like a well-wisher of all living entities in a way, in his own innocent way, like that. And he said that if Krishna consciousness spreads, all over the face of the world, then all anger will be removed from this planet, and we will all live very peacefully and happy together. So he made this statement to Srila Prabhupada, meaning well. So Srila Prabhupada very expertly and not sentimentally at all, he asked this young man, what is wrong with anger? And before the man could reply, Srila Prabhupada said, did somebody tell you that anger is bad? Okay. And then Srila Prabhupada said the same thing, that Lord Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita just to make Arjuna angry to fight. See? So really speaking, nothing is good and nothing is bad in relationship to Krishna, in relationship to service to Krishna. However, in the material world, everything is bad, even if it appears good. But when we use everything that appears to be bad and good in relationship to Krishna, even like anger, then it is absolutely good. Everything is in the absolute platform and transcendent in that way. So, if you have any questions about this particular part, Krodha Vegam, the actions of anger, we'll take them now. Anyone? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Prema, Radhika Prabhu, is there any questions there?
No, Maharaj. So far, no one is asking.
Okay, so now can you put slide 16 onto the screen? Slide 16, which is the next slide. Yes. So just to conclude with Krodha Vegam from Srila Prabhupada, okay. Srila Prabhupada says beautifully in paragraph 6 in the purport, we cannot stop anger altogether, but if we simply become angry with those who blaspheme the Lord or the devotees of the Lord, then we control our anger in Krishna consciousness. But not for our personal self. You can put me back onto the screen. But not for our personal self. If somebody blasphemes us, we may not react because, maybe we think it's on the basis of the false ego. But Srila Prabhupada also says that if somebody attacks your body, you should protect it. Because the body doesn't belong to the attacker. The body belongs, to Lord Chaitanya, to Radha and Krishna for their service. So why should somebody attack our body, which doesn't belong to them, but it actually belongs to Radha? So we should protect Krishna's property, which is also this body that we have. So that's another thing also. So we may become angry to protect the body, which is in relationship to service to Krishna. And it belongs to Radha and Krishna and Lord Chaitanya. All right, so we move to the next one. Vacha Vegam, Manasa Vegam, Krodha Vegam. Now, the last three, which is together, Jiva Vegam, Udara Upasta Vegam, which means the urges of the tongue, which means to taste. First, we had the first one, Vacha Vegam, which means to speak or vibrate. But now it talks about the tongue, Jiva Vegam, which means to taste. So the urges of the tongue, the belly, and the genitals. So this is together. It's sort of, excuse me. This is discussed together. Just give me a moment. It's discussed together. Yeah. So I'm going to read from paragraph 7 from the book, and then we'll take it from there. Paragraph 7 for me. Okay, in relation to this, and then we'll continue. It's a short paragraph. As for the urges of the tongue, we all experience that the tongue wants to eat palatable dishes. Generally, we should not allow the tongue to eat according to its choice, but should control the tongue by supplying prasad. The devotee's attitude is that he will eat only when Krishna gives him prasad. That is the way to control the urge of the tongue. One should take prasad at scheduled times and should not eat in restaurants or sweetmeat shops, simply to satisfy the whims of the tongue or belly. But we're not talking about Govindas here. I mean, especially if it's cooked by devotees, that's okay. If we stick to the principle of taking only prasad, then the urges of the belly and the tongue can be controlled. Okay? So, prasadam. Only prasadam. In other words, food cooked by devotees and offered by devotees becomes prasad. Not from outside restaurants or Prabhupada says sweetmeat shops. Yeah. So in 1971, Srila Prabhupada was traveling, with his different disciples in India also. And they were living in Gorakhpur. And in Gorakhpur, they were living in the Sri Krishna Niketan bungalow, which belongs to Hanuman Prasad Podar, who was the founder of Gita Press. And Srila Prabhupada was fond of Hanuman Prasad Podar. In other words, they were friends. And he was a devotee. He was a devotee. And therefore, when he published the Gita, just for the verses, the translation was more or less fine in not being impersonalist. It was for devotees at that time, from the Gita Press. And they published many other books also. They're quite famous in India. So when they were staying there, there was also one day, which was like the disappearance day of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So Srila Prabhupada arranged for the devotees to prepare a big prasadam feast. And he also arranged that we should feed all the leading people who are there in the Gita Press and invite them to the bungalow for honoring, the prasadam that has been offered to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. But Srila Prabhupada was not with the devotees downstairs honoring the feast. He took it, he honored the prasadam feast that was offered to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur in his room upstairs in the bungalow. So while the devotees were honoring the feast downstairs, Srila Prabhupada's servant named Nandakumar Prabhu, he came down and he said that Srila Prabhupada said two things. And Srila Prabhupada said that his Guru Maharaj, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, was very pleased with all of them. And the second thing Srila Prabhupada said that the feast was so good that he could not control himself. He could not control his tongue. And he overate. And then that way Srila Prabhupada encouraged the devotees and he also encouraged the cooks. And all of the devotees also overate the prasadam feast that was offered to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And in the early days, in the first temple in Los Angeles, which was not currently we have the big temple, Sri Rukmini Dwarkadish in Watsika Avenue. But prior to that, they had another rented place in La Cienega Boulevard. So in that place, at that time, His Holiness Tamal Krishna Goswami was the temple commander of that temple. See? And as part of the Sunday feast, in other words, during the week, the devotees, there were not much, feasts every day there because everyone was poor. Devotees were not getting much money coming into the treasury to have a feast every day. So the whole week, for lunch, the devotees would eat khichdi. It was, simple life, khichdi. Maybe just with some dal and some potatoes at times. So all the devotees, they used to look forward to the Sunday feast themselves. Not only the guests look forward, but they themselves used to look forward, to the Sunday feast. And during the Sunday feast, the devotees used to sit with the guests and honor the Sunday feast. But, Tamal Krishna Goswami noticed and the other leaders noticed that the devotees in the temple, when they go into the Sunday feast, it's like their plates are like a small mini Govardhan hill. And the guests that they are sitting with to preach to and associate with, to give them the association in Krishna consciousness, the guest plate will be like, okay, I'll take sufficient, like that. So in other words, the devotees know that they won't get such a feast for the whole week. They just eat khichdi every day. Simple prasad. Yeah. So Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he went to Srila Prabhupada when Srila Prabhupada came at one time there. And he complained. And he said, Srila Prabhupada, our devotees, on the Sunday feast, they stuff themselves, literally overeat, and then they just go to sleep after the guests leave. Like that. And then Srila Prabhupada said, yes, they eat to die. And then Srila Prabhupada said there's two philosophies that we know. That, you eat to live and you live to eat. See? But Srila Prabhupada coined the third one. You eat to die. This third one. See? And then in my sort of realization when I heard that, I added something myself. And I said, when Srila Prabhupada said, you eat to die, and I added to that, you eat to die, not to die again. In other words, you can eat your way back to Godhead, not to take birth, old age, disease, and death again, not to die again. Prasadam. Another time, Srila Prabhupada realized in the early days in 26 Second Avenue that many of the people, they were coming and they were also not coming again. Those who came, and stayed with him, they used to come more and more. But a lot of them used to come to 26 Second Avenue. They used to hear the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. They used to honor the prasadam. But when they leave, they sort of like don't come back again. See? So what Srila Prabhupada's ingenuity, very simple. Krishna consciousness is so simple to attract people to stay. Very simple. So Srila Prabhupada used to make these gulab jamuns, and he used to put them in this like a golden brown syrup. It's gulab jamun, it's round balls, gulab jamun. And every day he makes sure that this big jar of gulab jamun is left at the doorway before they step out of 26 Second Avenue, our place called Matchless Gifts. Yeah. So when anyone who comes in, when he goes to the doorway, he sees these big gulab jamuns like that. And he said, I may not come again. Let me just take one last one. See? So they'll put this sort of ladle or whatever was there, and they'll take one gulab jamun, put it in their hand, oozing with this nice golden syrup, brownish golden syrup, and they'll eat it. And they'll leave. And while they're eating and they're leaving the door, they will think, no, if I don't come back here, I won't get this. See? But I might as well come back. So they'll only come back, and after they attend the program, then that jar of gulab jamun will be placed there for somebody who wants to leave. Somebody who wants to leave. And there's one very senior sannyasi in our movement. He's still with us, one of the senior most sannyasi, like that. When he joined the 22nd Avenue, he always used to leave and take that, before leaving, take one of those gulab jamuns. See? And then he always thought of not coming back. But because of that gulab jamun, he always came back. He always came back. I'll give you his name. Amazing devotee. His name is Holiness Trivikram Swami. And you'll see many photos of Srila Prabhupada. And you'll see Trivikram Swami is very tall. And he's behind Srila Prabhupada. It's like as if, hovering like an umbrella, almost like an umbrella over him. So many photos of His Holiness Trivikram Swami. Amazing devotee. Amazing devotee. So he was telling me that. Actually, he was in Mauritius at one time, and he was telling me that I used to take that gulab jamun. And because of the gulab jamun, I just stayed. I never left. And famously, that gulab jamun was called, after that, ISKCON bullets. Like you'll be shot with this gulab jamun, which is an ISKCON bullet, and you'll stay. And you'll stay. ISKCON bullets. Another time, Srila Prabhupada said that overeating is a good mistake for a young man. But eating less, undereating is a good mistake for an old man, for an old person. Now, when in doubt, what do you do? Do you eat less or you eat more? Prasad. Eat less and eat more. But we all know everything else may fail. Our books may fail. Our festivals may fail. The philosophy may fail. Our temples may fail. Our deity worship may fail. All else may fail. But if all else fails, prasadam never fails. Because one has to still eat. One has to still eat. Prasadam will never fail to make us and still keep us in Krishna consciousness. So practically speaking, we can eat our way back home, back to Godhead. So I want to continue and then take questions, because Jiva Vegam, Udara Upasta Vegam. But before I continue, maybe we'll just take some questions about just Jiva Vegam before we connect it to Udara Upasta Vegam. Anyone has any questions about, or specifically, prasadam here? That tasting, the tongue, Jiva Vegam. Any questions?
No, Maharaj. I think we can continue.
Okay, good. So let's put on slide number 17 onto the screen. Yes. Jiva Vegam, Udara Upasta Vegam. Urges of the tongue, belly, and genitals. And in paragraph 14 in the text, one may observe, Srila Prabhupada says, that these three senses are physically situated in a straight line as far as the body is concerned, and that the bodily demands begin with the tongue. If one can restrain the demands of the tongue by limiting its activities to the eating of prasad, the urges of the belly and the genitals can automatically be controlled. Put me back onto the screen. So that is the secret of controlling the stomach or the belly and the reproductive organs. The secret is the tongue. Only honor Krishna Prasad because it's situated in a straight line. The secret of the tongue. See? So now I want to get to Udara Vegam, which means the belly. So I'm going to read from paragraph 17 in the purport about the belly. Okay. It's the paragraph that begins with those who suffer, if you have it in your books. Those who suffer from diseases of the stomach must be unable to control the urges of the belly, at least according to this analysis. When we desire to eat more than necessary, we automatically create many inconveniences in life. However, if we observe fasting days like Ekadashi and Janmashtami, we can restrain the demands of the belly. Very nice. Prabhupada speaks about coming out of suffering from diseases of the stomach. Basically. Okay. And then we're going to continue on paragraph 18. So I'm going to read it for you from the purport. Jiva Vegam, Udara, belly, Upasta Vegam, which means the genitals, basically reproductive organs. So on the next paragraph, which is on paragraph 18, I'm going to read about Udara and Upasta Vegam. Okay, I'm just going to read that. As far as the urges of the genitals are concerned, there are two, proper and improper, or legal or illicit sex. When a man is properly mature, he can marry according to the rules and regulations of the Shastras and use his genitals for begetting nice children. That is legal and religious. Otherwise, he may adopt many artificial means to satisfy the demands of the genitals, and he may not use any restraint. When one indulges in illicit sex life, as defined by the Shastras, either by thinking, planning, talking about, or actually having sexual intercourse, or by satisfying the genitals by artificial means, he is caught in the clutches of Maya. These instructions apply not only to householders, but also to Tyagis, or those who are in the renounced order of life. So, Srila Prabhupada gives a very beautiful analogy in the purport in the Bhagavad Gita, in chapter 2 in text number 58. That, and the analogy is about the tortoise or tortoise, however you pronounce that, is that unless one is able to follow the rules and regulations, that means the do's and the don'ts. Like the do is to chant minimum 16 rounds a day of japa daily, and the don't is no meat eating, no gambling, no illicit sex, and no intoxication. The do's and don'ts. In other words, you must follow to restrict oneself, actually. Have the potency to restrict oneself by chanting japa first. Have the potency to restrict oneself from sense enjoyment. Unless one is, able to do this, then it is not really possible to be firmly fixed in Krishna consciousness. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada gives this amazing example of the tortoise. See? The tortoise, or the tortoise as anyone can pronounce it either way, at any moment can wind up its senses and exhibit it again at any moment for a particular purpose. See? In other words, you'll see that this tortoise, it has a shell. But when it's moving, its limbs are out. You can see it. And even you can see some of its like torso, like it's the back portion coming out of the shell also, completely out. But it brings out the limbs, the front and the left legs and the hind legs, as well as its whole body in a sense out of the shell, only for a particular purpose. Only for a particular purpose. So similarly, the senses of a devotee or Krishna conscious person are only used for some particular purpose in the service of the Lord. Otherwise, it is withdrawn, like the tortoise. Otherwise, it is withdrawn. And also, if you see the habitat of a tortoise, that when some danger comes, like Maya, danger comes, it immediately withdraws its senses, withdraws its limbs into its shell, and it's protected by its own shell. In other words, similarly, a devotee, when they see Maya coming, when they see like material allurements coming, when they see some desire for sense gratification that can be moved to action coming with somebody else, they immediately withdraw into the, you could say, shelter of the holy name or the shelter of Krishna consciousness itself. So keeping these senses, only in the service of the Lord instead of our own sense gratification, always in the service of the Lord is the best example that is set by this analogy of this tortoise, who keeps its senses within, has that potency to keep its senses within. It's very important. Okay, do we have any questions for now?
Not yet, Maharaj.
Anyone?
Okay, no one is asking questions yet.
Okay. So we get to slide number 18. Onto the screen. Yes, beautiful. Thank you. I'm reading this slide. If you have your slide notes separately, you can look at them later, but it's on the screen. So in this translation of the particular verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, at least Untitled Lila, chapter 6, text 278, it's quite an amazing purport by Srila Prabhupada. And the translation says, when one eats food offered by a materialistic man, one's mind becomes contaminated. And when the mind is contaminated, one is unable to think of Krishna properly. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur suggests, excuse me, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur suggests that people who are materialistic inclined and sahajas, or so-called Vaishnavas, who take everything very casually about Vishayas or materialists. Eating food offered by them, it causes contamination. And as a result of such contamination, even a serious devotee becomes like a materialistic man. One should very carefully avoid associating with both the sahajas, who are sometimes known as Vaishnavas, and the non-Vaishnavas or Avaishnavas. The association changes the transcendental devotional service of Lord Krishna into sense gratification And when sense gratification enters the mind of a devotee, he is contaminated. The materialistic person who aspires after sense gratification cannot properly think of Krishna. Put me back on the screen. It's an amazing purport that Prabhupada gives to this translation, which is direct, that one is unable to remember Krishna if you contaminate the mind by honoring foodstuffs that are cooked by materialistic people. And Prabhupada emphasizes that even a materialistic man, when he contaminates a devotee by the food that you eat from them, a serious devotee becomes just like them. It affects the consciousness in that way. All right, any questions for now? Should I move along?
Yes, Maharaj.
Yes. Now, in the verse itself, beautiful words are there. You know, Vishaheta. So Vishaheta means, Vishaheta means one is able to tolerate Vishaheta. And Dira means a sober person. So therefore, Prabhupada starts the translation, a sober person who can tolerate these urges, these vegams. See? Intolerate. So, in other words, even if one is attached to like executing the, to have an idea of trying to execute the urges of the senses and the mind, like that. Still our primary process is actually hearing and chanting. But the secondary process that will help us after we hear and chant, especially our japa, is called sense control. And sense control is basically tolerance. Is to tolerate. Srila Prabhupada used to give the example of an itch. You know, everyone has experience that sometimes there's an itch on the skin. Okay? Now, if you cannot tolerate the itch on the skin, you may apply some ointment or some cream or something. But do you know that the body can heal itself? Now, possibly if you apply some cream over the skin when it itches, it may temporarily, it may immediately take away the itch. But who knows that the side effects of the cream that you're putting may bring the itch again in some other place, that where you applied the cream where there's no itch. The itch is in a particular part of the skin, but you have applied cream around it also. And you're thinking the itch may come again, and the itch will come again. But what happens is that the itch may be there, but if you don't apply anything, it will go away. It will go away because the body will heal itself. It will go away by its own accord. See, it will go away. But why you are feeling the itch is not because the itch is on the skin. It's because you are the soul that is conscious of the body. See? So if you do not scratch the itch, or if you do not apply something on it, you simply tolerate. Vishaheta dira. So if you tolerate that itch, it will go away. And it depends on the intensity of the itch. It may take a little while, but sometimes it goes away even after a few minutes. It will go away. So Vishaheta dira. However, very, very advanced devotees, they do not really need to tolerate anything, including the urges of vacha vegam, the tongue, to vibrate, to speak, speaking, vacha vegam, manasa vegam, krodha vegam, jiva vegam, udara vegam, upasta vegam. A very advanced devotee doesn't need to do that. Why? Because the devotee knows as long as one is in the material world, there must be pleasure and pain, which arises from the material body. The devotee knows that, he realizes that. See? And therefore, even Krishna says, in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, text number 13, Dehinasman yata dehe, komaran yovanam jara, tata dehantara praptir, tirasatra namoyati. So, tam titiksas vabharata. And then the next verse says, tam titiksas vabharata, matraspasas tu kunteya. Sitoshna sukha dukkada agama paininitas tam titiksas vabharata. That, one should, Krishna directly says that one should learn how to tolerate the temporary pains and pleasures of this material world. About it, it will come and it will go. It is temporary. It is temporary. So only by some level of tolerance that we may have, one can conquer the desires, that agitate us, that come and go. Just like the pleasures and pains of the material world come and go. Now, how does a very advanced devotee do this? A very advanced devotee does not need to tolerate, because a very advanced devotee knows that he is fully engaged in Krishna consciousness, and therefore when these things come, he doesn't know it's coming and going. Doesn't know it's coming and going. So therefore, an advanced devotee is considered the preacher. So what the preacher does, the preacher is there to help the mission of Krishna consciousness, to assist Srila Prabhupada in that, to deliver persons from the material world, from the clutches of the material energy of Maya. See? And when one does that as a preacher, sometimes the preacher is put into trouble by the non-devotees. And because his only desire, or one's only desire, is to push on the mission of spreading Krishna consciousness, the preacher does not see the challenges that comes through, for spreading Krishna consciousness. He knows that the non-devotees are innocent in ignorance. And what he does, he automatically tolerates. Automatically tolerates. He's even not even worried about the result of his preaching. He just goes on preaching. So therefore, Lord Chaitanya advised Trinadapi Sunechana Tharorapi Saistana Amanena Kit Mananena Kirtanya Sadhari. And the preacher knows that when he has exhausted his energy, for the day to spread Krishna consciousness, when he comes back, he simply picks up his bead bag and he chants Hare Krishna. Because he naturally tolerates the onslaughts of the challenges and the problems of giving Krishna consciousness in this world. So what the preacher does, he dovetails his tolerance in spreading Krishna consciousness. So he doesn't need to worry about his own mind and senses to tolerate. See? So therefore, if one is ready by practice actually to bear insult and injury and dishonor from others, then one can be engaged, in Krishna consciousness to make spiritual advancement. So that means that one should, tolerate so many insults and so much dishonor from others that one forgets one's tolerating one's own mind and senses when it agitates one. So it is expected, because material nature is constituted like that. The material world is constituted. And Srila Prabhupada gives such an amazing example of Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad, just 5 years of age, young boy, like that. He was engaged in the cultivation of spiritual knowledge through the mercy of Narada Muni. But he was endangered all the time by his father. because of his father was very antagonistic towards Prahlad's devotion and devotional service as well as preaching. And we know Hiranyakashipu, he tried to kill him in so many ways, but Prahlad, he didn't know he was tolerating his father. He didn't even know that. So there may be so many obstacles or impediments in making advancement in spiritual knowledge of Krishna consciousness. But if you try to spread Krishna consciousness, you automatically will be tolerant without you knowing it. And when you come back to the association of devotees, you will treasure and relish the association of devotees, even if there's challenges to serve and associate with devotees. So just like Prahlad Maharaj, all the pure devotees of the Lord, they're in this material world because they are full of compassion to deliver, the suffering souls in this world. And they are ready. They look forward to all tribulations, to all sorts of suffering, and that is the quality of a Vaishnava. That they try to deliver all persons who are suffering in this hellish condition of material existence. And therefore the Vaishnavas are given this nice, beautiful prayer. Beautiful prayer. And we'll conclude that with that for today. And we can take questions tomorrow again. And that beautiful prayer, the Vaishnava Pranam. Vansha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanabhyo Vaishnavabhyo namo namah. That I offer my humble or respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They can fulfill the desires of everyone who are just like desire trees, and they are full of compassion. Full of compassion, these last words. They are full of compassion for the fallen, conditioned souls. So this is the chief concern of a devotee, especially a preacher, is to deliver others just like how the preacher himself or herself was delivered by coming to Krishna consciousness. And that will make us sober. Vishaheta dira, that will make us sober. And we do not have to worry too much about controlling the urges of our own mind and senses when we spread Krishna consciousness. All right, we are almost time. I'm not sure if you want to ask one more question, anyone, but we are almost time. Anyone out there?
Maharaj, there's a question by Pranath Prabhu. You have written the question in the Zoom group chat. So the question is, how to understand...
What do you mean by Zoom group chat? They're not on this Zoom or what? It's different?
I mean, there's a group chat is there. It's like they just ask question there. So that because I think they don't want to come on the screen. So they just write the question for me to read.
Okay, read out the question.
How do we understand fall down of devotee? Why does it occur? For us, we are insignificant, so it is tough. Through we have so much of beautiful guidance. That's all.
How do we understand the fall down of a devotee?
Yes, Maharaj.
Is that the words he used?
Yes, that's the exact word he used.
He has answered his own question in the question. Prananath Prabhu said, how do we understand the fall down of a, what's the last word?
Devotees.
So even if a devotee who falls down, he is still a devotee. He is still a devotee because he has practiced Krishna consciousness prior to his fall down. And because he has practiced Krishna consciousness prior to his fall down, that eternal credit of that practice of Krishna consciousness will make him get up again and walk nicely, not to fall down again. So even if a devotee is fallen, we who are not fallen should not see the fallen nature of the devotee. Rather, we should see how we can help him to get up or get her up and walk again without falling down in the practice of Krishna consciousness. So if a devotee who's fallen is still a devotee, but we can help the devotee improve because he or she has experience and some realization in Krishna consciousness to come back, not to fall down again. That's the answer. Okay? And that's what is actually the meaning of, Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanabhyo vaishnavabhyo namo namaha. And the last part of that Vaishnava pranam is that a devotee is full of compassion for the fallen souls. The devotee is full of compassion for the fallen souls. Even if a devotee is fallen, you must have compassion for the devotee who is fallen and still consider him as a devotee and bring him and her up to his rightful position of nicely practicing Krishna consciousness again. Vaishnavabhyo namo namaha patitana pavanabhyo patitana pavanabhyo, full of compassion for the fallen souls. What to speak of a devotee who may be temporarily fallen, not really fallen, temporarily fallen. All right, we thank you all very much. We look forward to your nice association again tomorrow at the same time. Srila Prabhupada ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki, Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada ki, and Nectar of Instruction ki, Shri Upadeshamrita ki, Nitai Go Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees. So I just want to make an announcement that yesterday's class, every day we'll be posting the class here in this YouTube page. This is yesterday's class. So I also will share the link in the Zoom group chat. You can find it here. Within 24 hours, we'll be posting the class here. So just want to let the devotees know. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you, Maharaj. See you tomorrow. So devotees, you can always go to this website. I've shared the link in the group chat. So we will share the recorded class in this link every day. Thank you. Hare Krishna. I hope everyone got the link. Maybe I'll just share the screen once more again.